Thank you so much, Basant sir, for taking out time on your calendar and helping us with our queries in the investment journey. We are really excited to host you today. And with us, we have our existing students as well as our alumni who have expressed interest in asking a lot of questions. And from those lot of questions, we filtered a few of them to ensure that we utilize your time as optimally as possible. So thank you so much for taking out time and shall we get started, sir?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So we can jump right on to the Q&A. So that's going to open everything wide. And it's also going to give people a chance to actually ask what they want to know, not what I want to speak.
Thank you so much, sir. All right, so to begin with, we have Yash Gandhi. He is our FinPlus program student. Yash, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Basant sir, for giving
Hi,
us your
Yash.
time again. Hi. So my question is basically, you made 240x, right, in Pantaloon and Page, and I was just wondering, what's your opinion? Can you find such huge wealth creators in today's market where the private equity and venture capital guys, they already take away all the fast growing businesses, and you don't get such opportunities right now?
I
Do you
got a
think they're
question.
still
Yeah.
available? Yeah.
See, 40x is available, not in India. You'll have to go to the NASDAQ. Because in India, there are very few companies. 40x aapko milega when there is huge technology change happening. So you might have a 40x in a Tesla, which we own, by the way. Not from these prices. Maybe you can have from these prices if you hold it for 10 years. But in India, especially, you won't have it. See the kind of listing, and nothing is a recommendation. I think everything goes on record, and I will not repeat this line all the time. Nothing is a recommendation because it should be construed that nothing is a recommendation. Look at the kind of valuation Nykaa came at. I mean, you can make a 40x in a stock like a Nykaa, but not at 2,000 rupees. You have to buy it at 100 and then see it go up to 2,000 and then double to 4,000. That's the price. See, the first thing about making a 40x is you have to buy it at a low PE multiple. So in India, those chances are not there right now. The private equity and those guys have crowded it out. But yes, if you have the technology edge, that is why I tell young people, even my children, my son who's just passed class 10, to go and learn science. But because आपको जब तक साइंस समझ नहीं आएगा, आपको बिजनेस मॉडल समझ नहीं आएगा, बिजनेस मॉडल समझ नहीं आएगा, you will not be able to extrapolate. You will know Spotify is a great thing, but how Spotify works, how can it get to 1 billion users in the world, that you will never be able to figure out unless you can figure out the business dynamics. So that's the thing.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir. So my next question is basically, what do you look for in a research analyst? What is that personal, any qualitative attributes that you look for in a person where you may think that this guy can be, make it big in the markets?
Yeah. So first thing is like, of course, usko ROE nikalna aana chahiye. You should know how to read a balance sheet and blah, blah, blah. All of you know that. But what is not discussed at all is he has to be an optimist. He has to go to bed thinking that tomorrow will be better than today. There have been situations where our portfolio has been bruised and battered and stocks have been hitting down and people will say, you are not doing well in these times. What is wrong with you? But you have to think that if my company does well, I will do well. So the first thing, you have to be an optimist. You have to believe the management unless you have a reason not to believe them. So most research analysts, I figure out, so if a stock is at 300, the report will come and say target price 330. Even for the biggest of multi-baggers that have got 100x, they start with a 10% upside or a 15% upside because they have to keep their jobs. So even if you are looking at such reports and if you don't have a good understanding of the thing, you will feel, "Ye kya likha hai isme?" But bottom line is, of course, you look at companies, you look at balance sheet, which I think in the subsequent question we'll be able to address as to what you have to look at. The first thing is you have to be an optimist. You have to think that money has to be made in this market, and you have to think that you have come to the market to make 5 or 10 crores and not come to the market to make 50,000 or 1 lakh or 2 lakh just to buy yourself a new bike. So that's the bottom line.
Okay, got it. Very clear. And so my last question is basically, do you take any, so do you estimate forward earnings for a stock, let's say 2-3 years down the line, but do
Yeah.
you also estimate forward multiples? Or do you think is that easy to do it, or is that very difficult?
It's very easy, but people ignore it. So if a company is on a growth path, which is it's growing at 30%, 30%, 30%, and the P ratio is say 15, 20, 22, then the P tends to expand with each quarter of earnings. So The moment the earnings keep on expanding, growing, the PE will keep on expanding to the point that the earnings stop to grow. So you'll say, what happens if the earnings grow for 4 years? If the earnings keep growing for 4 years, the PE will expand. So even for a 30% growth, you will have a PE that can hit right up to 70 or 80. That is because there are only so many companies in India that will grow at 30%. And once you have figured out that this is one of those which is going to grow at 30%, you want to buy that. And everyone wants to buy that company which is growing the fastest in class. It's like the child who comes first in class. He always gets what he wants. Nobody says कि ये नहीं खरीदना है अभी. But आप फेल होके घर पहुंचोगे तो लोग बोलेंगे अभी नहीं खरीदना, अगले महीने खरीदना, अभी बहुत खर्चा हो गया. But if you've come first in class, your parents will never say अभी बहुत खर्चा हो गया. बोले ले ले बेटा तू और पढ़ लेकिन कम से कम. So with the top-notch growers in the market, that's the way the market deals with it. And you know, when growth is in fancy, when a sector is in fancy and a company is growing, valuations don't matter. Later on, people will say, "ये वहाँ से गिर गया, ये यहाँ हो गया." But for the moment, if there is growth, you should not ignore valuations, but put valuations on the second line of your research.
Okay, Miss. So just one sort of short follow up on that. But sir, do you? I mean, if there would be a big risk of P contraction, right? When
The P will not contract. I know what you're saying. The P, I will not say will not. The P generally does not contract till the growth keeps on happening. And the moment there is no growth, फिर भी contract होएगा. But by the time you would have made so much money that you can give 40% from the top and also it doesn't matter. So you spoke about my Pantaloon thing where I made 40x. I bought it at 7. The stock went to 875. So it was what you can calculate how much it went up. But I sold at 280 because it kept falling and I didn't know how to exit and when to exit and why to exit. But still I made 40x. So, but had I just sold it off just because the PE has gone higher, you will never make a multi-bagger if you sell on valuation. And just go and cross-verify, go and back-check. Valuation to first, second, third year से full लगने लग जाता है. But a good company always surprises you with earnings. And when a company surprises with earnings, then obviously the PE tends to expand even more. So the bottom line is if growth is in place, the PE will not contract. But yes, once the growth stops, then the PE starts to contract.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, the next question we have from Dhruv Doshi. He's our alumni. He's presently working with Axis Capital. Dhruv?
Hi.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Hi, Dhruv.
Pleasure to have you here. So I have two set of questions. So the first one is like you mentioned that you give more importance to mind share rather than market share in a business. So can you let us know the ideology behind it? Like what is your thinking behind that? Why do you focus more on mind share?
So Mindshare has got a very tough recall thing. So you have to buy Mindshare, but not at every price, not at any price. You know, when you have Mindshare, it's like you're always on the customer's head and a customer pays a little more to you. And I keep coming to it. So look at the guys in US who buy Tesla. They put 100% of their money into one company. And because they feel so strongly about the product, that's what they think. So, there are two things about a company when you see market share is in the numbers and numbers change very fast. If you don't have your client's mind share, you will also lose the market share. But if you have his mind share, that market share is there permanently for a longer period of time. So there's no way to define mind share like this. You will know whether it has mind share or it doesn't have a mind share. Like people who want to spend some time in the evening having light fun would go and watch Kapil Sharma's Comedy with Kapil, right? So uska ek mind share hai, uska market share apne aap aata hai because mind share aata hai. So mind share pulls the market share. Market share can't pull the mind share.
Got it, sir. So this second question is, in your book, Thoughtful Investor, you mentioned that mergers and acquisitions do not add the expected value to the acquiring company. So what points do you keep in mind while checking or analyzing the M&A?
So I will give you an example. I think Google bought YouTube for $1 billion or something about 15 years back. I don't have the exact number, but today YouTube is worth 175 billion or thereabouts. So if the acquiring company has got the distribution, for example, Imami bought Zandu Pharma in 2007-8. So suddenly Zandu Pharma did not have the distribution strength, and that time there was no internet penetration. So Imami could load Zandu's products amongst all its distributors and suddenly start to sell. So you have to see what is the added, if a company is buying another company just to add revenues and just to add bottom line, then it's not worth it. Because I've always said that you should always buy the shikar, not the shikari, because you pay top dollar for someone. See, you like a neighbor's house, right? So if you tell him mujhe bech de, he will always quote you 30% more. But if you like any house in the locality, you can get it at the market price. So when you buy something, you should be able to add significantly higher amount of value to it. For example, Facebook or Instagram, right? So Facebook, through its reach, through its own cross selling thing, created 100x out of Instagram. So you have to know how you're going to leverage what you're going to buy. If you cannot leverage, and if you're just adding top line and bottom line, then that acquisition doesn't work. And plus, acquisitions have to be made in cash. If you have a very, very valuable stock, never pay cash. Always do it with a stock swap. So if the market falls, then you have overpaid on something with an overpaid stock. So, for example, Tata Steel bought Chorus because Chorus was a steel plant without raw material linkage. So, Tata Steel felt the burden for years and years and years. Tata Motors, on the other hand, went and bought JLR, Jaguar Land Rover. Initially, there was no value add, but then they reverse engineered and brought the cost down. So there was value add. So if you can't add value, you have to see what the acquirer brings to the table on the acquisition. So then I think that's the proper way of looking at an acquisition strategy.
Basically, the motive behind the company being bought.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Got it. Thank you so much.
I have a follow-up question, if you'd allow. So let's say if you have motive, but sometimes it's literally impossible to put that motive down to figures. For let's say a company like Quest Corp, which kept on going about crazy acquisition spree, and then eventually did a hell lot of goodwill write-off in the upcoming years, because some of those didn't really fructify the way they would have wanted. So my question is, like, let's say even if the line of sight is clear, but sometimes you never know how things will pan out. So go about
I've understood. आपको समझ में आ जाएगा. For example, Zomato. Not that we are bullish on Zomato or bearish on Zomato at these prices, but let's say Zomato tomorrow says that we will start funding. अब आप किसको fund करोगे? You will start funding the restaurant owners. चलो ठीक है, कि इसका रेस्टोरेंट से सादा सामान बिक रहा है, इसका नहीं बिक रहा है. So you have some start. Then they say we will start funding people who are having breakfast. Or you can do that because this guy has a breakfast. Where does he stay? Oh, he stays in, say, Golf Link in Delhi. Matlab, that's an upper priced community. So he must be staying in an expensive place. So you have that data, you can fund. So there's this company in China called Meituan Dumpling, which is the extended form of Zomato. So you have to go and understand what Meituan Dumpling does. So they fund the restaurant owners, they fund the people who are buying from the food vendor, they fund people who are carrying the food from point A to point B. So there is some data advantage that you get. So then you can know this. If you are buying an NBFC just to fund these people, then there is some advantage. But if you just open up an NBFC and you say, I'm going to start funding the restaurant owners, you have no data to start from. You don't know kiski idli zyada bikti hai aur kiski idli kam bikti hai. For that, you need some data bag. So you need to start from somewhere. So that is how you can do it. For example, Uber gets so much data that Uber knows कि Mr. X अपने घर से बैठते हैं तो हफ्ते में 4 दिन he goes to the Taj and then he returns back. So Uber can, if they try and navigate through the data, understand that Mr. X must be a wealthy man. So can I offer a car loan to Mr. X? Would Mr. X qualify for an insurance policy from us? Would Mr. X be a wealth management client for us? But Uber is not doing that. I'm saying if these kind of cross calculations can happen, then it puts the strategy and the synergy to a different level. But if you just want to start a wealth management business and start funding people, then it becomes very difficult.
Got it. I think that adds a bit more clarity to my mindset. Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from Nawaz. He is our FinPlus program student. Nawaz, you can begin with your question.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah,
Pleasure to meet you, sir. Sir, I had listened in one of your interviews that we have to invest in 4 to 5 great growth companies instead of 15 to 20 companies. So, sir, in that case, risk will also increase. So, sir, if we are investing in 4 to 5 companies, then if single business will get wrong, then it affects entire portfolio. Sir, so sir, which aspects, according to you, most important to check while selecting the companies? And sir, also the risk, what risk aspects did you follow at the time of analyzing the business?
So Nawaz, if you just have 4 or 5 companies to invest in, you will normally not invest in a loser. For example, if I tell you just buy one NBFC, Group Finance, Bajaj Finance, DHFL और Yes Bank, आप कौन सा लोगे? आप लोग Group, Bajaj, DHFL, Yes Bank तो लेना ही नहीं. You have to buy just one. So the moment you shorten the number of stocks you buy, your subconscious mind immediately tells you, look, boss, there is no chance of taking a risk because it's very difficult to recover. And this is something which cannot be explained by numbers. And if I have to explain to you by numbers, then I would say if you buy 4 or 5 companies in sectors that are growing, then you buy the sector leader. So who's the sector leader? A company that makes the maximum amount of revenue is a sector leader. So if in 1994, somebody told you that software would do big and great, then you would say, I would buy Infosys, maybe a Wipro, no Satyam, no HCL was not listed at that time. So no Mastech, nothing. Because if you want to buy a media company, then you will say, would you want to buy a second number, third number, fourth number media company out of just one that you want to buy? Or would you buy the topmost guy out there? It's like saying that if I have to, so let's say, choose amongst all of you in class, that who's the most intelligent of them all? And this is without biases. So I'll say, yaar, marksheet nikal do, first jo aaya, shayad wohi intelligent hoga. The guy who's come third could also be intelligent. The guy who's failed could also be the most intelligent, because most billionaires are dropouts. But the probability of the guy who's coming first being the most intelligent is always higher than the probability of the guy who's failing in class to be the most intelligent. Haan, hote hain, exceptions hote hain, but that is how you see. If you have to buy just 1 or 2, then you will definitely, your mind will never allow you to buy anything that is not, that is not top class. So that's how you get saved.
Okay, sir, got it. Sir, my next question is a lot of companies shows high growth for a short period of time. But sir, you are investing in structurally high growth for a decade. So, sir, what parameters do you focus on differentiating between short-term growth and long-term structural growth? As the main problem is every time some short-term growth happens for 3-4 quarters, everyone will have detailed thesis of why this will last for 4 to 5 years. Sir, can you please help with few case studies?
So there is a structural change that happens. So sometimes you will notice it, sometimes you will notice it with hindsight. So in 2002, the telecom revolution happened, where everyone started going and picking up a mobile phone, and there was this Geo was not there. There was this Reliance phone, and there was this Bharti Airtel and Vodafone and a couple of more. So that was a structural revolution. So you need industry growth. If the industry is growing at 5% and your company is growing at 25%, वो growth sustainable नहीं है. वो 25% will come back to 10%. But if the industry is growing at 20% and your company is growing at 30%, then that growth is sustainable. For example, in today's environment, if you see, for example, I just spoke about Spotify. So there's this company called Snowflake. आप लोग जो भी थोड़ा सा science का background है should try and understand that. Cloud is going to become huge over the next 10 years. So Snowflake is more into cloud storage and cloud management. So ये American company है. So when cloud itself is growing at 15, 20%, 30%, Snowflake can actually grow at 50, 60% also. But if Snowflake says that I'm going to do something, but the industry is not growing, it's like trying to draw water in the state of Rajasthan. आप राजस्थान में कुआं खोदोगे तो पानी नहीं निकलेगा. कुआं तो आपको समुद्र के किनारे खोदोगे तो जल्दी निकलेगा. That's the thing. So you have to have industry growth, then your growth becomes sustainable and predictable. Now, there are certain places where there is no growth. For example, cyclical. You know कि थोड़ा सा जहां demand आया, growth हुआ, people start making more money, immediate new capacities will come up. So you need an entry barrier to control the new guys from entering the business. So for a cyclical, like a steel, cement, there'll be no growth. But cement, there is growth because they have a cartel. So because of the cartel, they hold the prices up. So this is the way to look at it. But normally, a structural change will always happen longer in those industries where there's an industry growth or whether the industry is changing. For example, the electric vehicle right now It's just catching up in India. That is a structural growth story. So these kind of companies normally do well. And plus, one more thing I would like to add here is, when the unorganized space is very small and the organized space is huge, suddenly the market shifts from the unorganized to the organized, which means that even though the industry might not grow, the organized space keeps growing because it takes away market share from the unorganized. So what is unorganized? Unorganized is like on the road, there are people selling garments. And what is organized? Organized could be you walk into a mall and you pick up, any Zodiac shirt. So that's the organized. So people are shifting, there are aspirations, aapka per capita goes up. So obviously you want to buy more from the organized space. So the organized and unorganized also plays an important role in trying to understand how this functions.
Okay, sir, got it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Parth Shah. He's our Finplus program student. Parth.
Yes, sir. Good evening,
Hi,
sir. So, in one of your interview, you said sometimes more information creates more confusion. Can you give some example to explain this through a real life scenario where actually avoiding some information regarding a business actually help to generate better returns or give you confidence to hold on? What I basically mean is that after reading that particular information, a lot of people who decided to sell the stock, but you ignored that and held on.
Yeah. So let me tell you, right. So when I bought Page at 350 and I sold at 14,000. And from 450 to right up to today, the promoter keeps selling. They used to sell 10 shares, 15 shares, 20 shares. So people who bought with me, they said, the promoter khud hi bech raha hai share, aap kyun utha ke rakhe ho, usko bech do uthakar. But then my contention was, the 10, 15, 20 shares that the promoter is selling is a very small part of what he actually holds in all. So that information obviously was not relevant, but it used to come every day. Go and check the NSE BSE disclosure of 2009, 2010. Every second day he used to sell 10 shares, 15 shares, 20 shares, God knows why. In the current context, there is so much of activity happening on what is going to happen to the Fed fund rates, what is going to happen to recession, inflation. Anything that gets talked about too much gets discounted into the price. And that is why if there is too much discussion happening on a particular event, even if though the event might happen, it might not create the same negative stroke positive influence on price. So for example, if tomorrow, if people say that the government is going to abolish Income Tax Act, ek baar to market badh jayega, right? But then if this is discussed too many times, and Income Tax Act is actually abolished, then the market doesn't go up. The reason is that everybody has positioned their portfolio depending on this event. So if people say US is going into a depression and everybody talks about it every day, जिसको बेचना होता है पहले ही बेच देता है. So जब actual news आती है, there are no new sellers left to sell, and that is why the market normally reverses. So that is what I meant when I said that too much information, and in today's environment with WhatsApp and with Twitter and Facebook, there's actually too much information.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So my second question is, you explained in one of the interview that if someone wants to buy low quality company, it should be bought only after it has started showing some signs of recovery.
Yeah.
Here, did you mean that when they start making profit or when there is a momentum in a stock price, like it's going?
So two things. Stock price momentum will happen before they start making profit. अब वो क्यों होता है? क्योंकि insider को पता होता है कुछ ना कुछ कोई ना कोई खरीदना शुरू कर देता है. But you cannot base your logic on that. So if you see that steel prices are going up across the globe, वो आपको पहले पता चलेगा. But Steel Authority of India का result आएगा 3 महीने बाद. But you know steel prices are going up, and the stock price is also going up because everyone else also who has done some research is not relying on historic balance sheet and historic fundamentals, but trying to extrapolate on where this company would go. So if you have a situation like that, you can actually buy that stock before the company declares its numbers. So that is what I meant to suggest, that when there is a change happening in a low quality, and in case of a recovery, the worst company does the best. So Steel Authority of India would do the best when there is a steel recovery. And when there is a fall, I mean, when there is a cyclical top and the steel stock starts to fall, that time, the best of the company will fall the least because it's supposed to be the best. And Steel Authority and companies like that would fall more than the others. So that is what I meant when I said that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So the next question is from Shivik Kejriwal. He's our FinPlus program student. Shivik.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. So my question is, sir, can you give some insights about your idea generation process, like how to pick up growth stories early? If I'm setting it at this juncture, so how should I go about looking for growth so that I can find it cheaper?
Growth, I mean, it's going to come to you. आप क्रिकेट खेलते हो तो आप फर्स्ट स्लिप में जो फील्डिंग करता है ना, उसको दिन में 3 या 4 ही कैच आते हैं, उसको पकड़ना है, उसको 3-4 कैच को. He has to be ready for a catch on every ball, but then he's going to get 3-4 catches only for the entire day. So growth, for example, आपको you would know that in India what is growing. So higher consumer disposable income. Everyone knows that Bajaj Finance is growing. So no recommendations again here. So it's quite easy to figure that out. So companies that grow, you would know them. For example, there is one concept called buy what you see. So what you use, you go and buy those stocks. So if you are wearing a Peter England shirt, you go and figure out what company is manufacturing them. If you are wearing Bata shoes, you go and figure out how Bata is doing. But then you don't buy Bata just because you're wearing their shoes. Bata might well be past its growth peak. So that's the first indication. And that growth is the longest that happens over time. So this is what I meant. That idea generation can come to you while watching TV, while looking at an ad, while driving a car. So अगर Tata Nexon आपको अच्छी लगती है and your neighbor has bought one, then you know that electric vehicle is doing well. Then let me go and research Tata. How does this car work? So things like that.
Sir, a follow-up question there. Like, do you use any quantitative approach for idea generation, taking a look at fundamentals maybe? If yes, then what typical factors do you look at when it comes to idea generation?
Yeah. So if there is growth of 20%, you want your company to be growing at 30%, because you don't want your company to be growing at below the. If there is a growth at 20%, you want your company's ROE to be more than the growth, because I don't know whether you guys have done this or not, but normally the ROE into 1 minus growth is the kind of growth that you can normally carry on while you are self-funding a certain project. For example, a company that is growing at 20% and has an ROE of 15% has a shortfall of 5% in its funding mechanism because it cannot generate so much cash. So you have to look at, you have to have a high ROE. Then you say management kaise pata chalega? That's a tough one. But management normally for a high ROE company is normally considered to be good. Then whether there's an industry growth or not, or that's the only Charlie in town that is trying to grow fast, then that's also an issue where you want to buy companies where there is some certain kind of an industry growth, because that helps you move smoothly around. Then you want a small market cap. If you're buying a 20% grower with 10 lakh crore market cap, sooner or later the market is going to exhaust itself. So these are the few things you look for while you buy a growth company.
Got it, sir. Thank you, sir. Shivik, you can continue with your question.
Yeah. So, sir, my next question was that if I'm holding a stock and suddenly that stock fell by, let's say, 10-20%, and there is not information which I can directly link to that. So what would you do in such a situation? Will you wait for the clarity to happen, or will you start accumulating the position? So this question is
in the short term. No, I've got it. In the short term, the market is blind. In the long run, it's got binocular eyes. So I have seen situations where stocks fall 60% and you will never know what has happened just because somebody's panicking, somebody's got a margin call, and someone's stock is being sold. So these are situations that you have to deal with only with experience. If you remember in 2020, during the COVID era, Bajaj Finance fell from 4,800 to 1,800 and then recovered back. So you could have sold Bajaj Finance at any of these levels and said, yeah, I want to be out of it. But then you would never get a chance to get back in again. So till the time your company actually reports bad fundamentals to you, it makes a little more sense to keep holding and to think that the market in the short run, there are so many people deciding on that one piece of information that the volatility it causes is just abrupt and violent. So you cannot be misguided by volatility, because अब हर आदमी को एक ही खबर एक ही बार में मिलती है और वो एक ही दरवाजे से निकलते हैं, एक ही दरवाजे से घुसते हैं. It's like a theater being on fire. So everyone wants to run out of it at the same time through the same door and without any line or something. So there's utter chaos, and that is what happens in the market. So Stocks can fall 10, 20, 30% just like that. And then they recover back if the fundamentals are fine.
Okay, got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Vidhi. Vidhi is our FinPlus program student. Vidhi, you're on mute.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
Hi. Yeah, good evening. Bolo.
Sir, in one of the sessions, you said that whenever there is, I think you partly touched upon this in your earlier questions as well, that whenever there is any negative news in the market, it usually is already discounted in the stock price. Like you discussed about recession and inflation and things like that. But my question is that how do I know that it is completely discounted in it and it will not, I will never.
Yeah, I've got it.
know.
No, how do I know? I think it's a tough one. But you will know it when it happens. Like, for example, the Fed will increase rates up to 3.5%. And I'm saying that because most of you would be discussing this at this time, because अभी सबसे hot topic यही है, Fed क्या करेगा. तो 3.5 हो जाएगा, right? 3.5 हो जाएगा. Fed meeting है 75, 50, 75, 50. The debate goes on. Then they say it's 75. Then the Fed comes and says, no, inflation is high. We'll take it up to 3.5. And the market falls again. And then they say the same thing, 3.5. Next day, something happens and the market falls again. Third time it happens. See, there's no foolproof formula. But if the market is falling again, just because the Fed is saying 75 basis points now and 75 in September and 3.5 by the end of the year, अगर ये 2-3 हफ्ता हो गया ना, then you will say, हो गया यार, कितना एक बार के लिए बोलोगे? It's like a child who fails in class and comes home, एक थप्पड़ पड़ती है, दूसरी पड़ती है, तीसरे बार वही बोलते, कितने बार मारोगे यार? फेल तो हो गए, मार तो दिया मुझे, अब कितनी पिटाई होगी? So it's the same thing with the market. So the market keeps on falling, and I think at 15,200 we wrote a letter to a client saying that हमें लगता है bottom हो गया, because that was by chance. You knew it at 15, but you were falling for the same reason. You can't be falling for the same reason over and over and over again. And let me tell you, I think June inflation numbers were 9.1. Market was assuming it to be 8.7. And the Dow, I think, fell only 200-300 points. And then it almost recovered the next day, which meant that ho gaya, bad news ka koi impact nahi hai. So the bottom line is, when bad news can't take stock prices lower, you know that they have bottomed. And when good news cannot take stock prices higher, you should think that they are somewhere around the top.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So the next question is from Preet Jain. He's our alumni presently working with Nidara Capital. Preet.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure to have you here. Sir, basically my question is on the incumbent versus startup side. Sir, how do you analyze the scenario when incumbents are generally slow to react due to disruption in dilemmas? Sir, because to go all into a new category will burn their existing cash and might also make them lose focus in their existing segment. And also, sir, when they will enter into a new segment, their revenue will be cannibalized from the existing segment. And the last thing is when they initially enter new segment, it is a small market. So basically growth is everyone has predicted the growth that it is a limited growth. So they have limited gain. So they keep on building war chest, and sir, they wait for the correct opportunity to come and then invest. But till the time, sir, the time has gone and the disruption starts in the market, because sir, new company comes and they gain the market share from the company, as we have seen in many scenarios, like sir, Kodak versus Sony in camera, Nokia versus Apple, and Sony versus Apple, NSE versus BSE. The examples on the screen.
Right, very correct. So you've actually answered quite a few of them, and then you also see what happened. Reliance did not go into software, and Mukesh Ambani made a comment saying that we should have gone into it, and somebody unknown from nowhere. Wipro was a vegetable processing, oil processing company which went into doing software because probably they had the insight. So the problem is, in such cases, people don't know. That is why most of these companies which are family owned are a little slow to move. Most of the companies that are professionally run can still move faster. For example, you said Kodak. In case of digital cameras, Kodak thought कि अगर मैं ये digital camera launch कर दूंगा, तो शायद हमारा ये real film बिकना बंद हो जाएगा. So the thing is, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. That's very simple. For example, Maruti is still sitting on its ICE engine, which is the normal gasoline and the diesel powered fuel fired engines. They're not going into electric because they think मैं electric जाऊंगा तो ये वाली बिक्री मेरी कम हो जाएगी. But for somebody who doesn't have that legacy effect like a Tesla, उसको कोई मतलब ही नहीं, उसको तो electric ही बनाना है और electric ही बेचना है. So when you have these two kind of a scenarios, you should be very careful whether the company has got an independent department or an independent CEO who is getting into this new business, because the guy who's overseeing both the things will always be in a trouble. And normally it's the new incumbent first generation promoter who steals the show in case of a new wave. And that is why in software, of course, TCS was there, but in software and telecom, you always had these new guys who just took over everything. For example, in Bajaj Finance used to finance the Bajaj scooters. So they had small kind of an advantage, but it was not the kind of advantage that you would, I think if Bajaj Finance would not have been financing the scooters, I don't think Bajaj Finance would have become the Bajaj Finance of today. Because they had a small start, they thought, okay, let me do this, let me do that. So that is how the entire thing works.
Sir, but if the growth is limited, then putting cash into that segment and allocating capital in that segment, sir, wouldn't it be fruitful because it can give a return in short period of time if we have to think of long period then?
No, growth पहली बात है किसी को पता ही नहीं होता. जो कोई नया चीज आता है उसका growth लंबा होता है. Unless you're making a pager and then you say pager died within 1 year or 2 years or 3 years because the mobile phone came through. So that is a leap of faith you have to take. For example, in the Indian broadcasting business, Z was a no one at that time because nobody thought कि cable TV इतना बड़ा हो जाएगा. Subhash Chandra came from nowhere and he set it up because the existing guys could have done this. RPG group had the Saregama. They should have done it. But that is how it is. Growth, you will get a sense whether it can become big or not. So anything that is new right now, you know whether it can become big or not. But then the problem is, for example, with American companies, with Google, for example, or with America, or with Chinese companies like Alibaba, Tencent. So those are the kind of companies that go into multiple businesses at the same time with small capital because they have the capital to burn. They say, "Acha, theek hai, ghata hoega, to we'll write it off." And that's where the Indian software companies have actually lagged behind. Instead of trying to buy out new businesses, what they did was they bought back their own shares. I mean, they shouldn't have been buying shares. Infosys and TCS, I mean, one of them could have gone and bought Twitter for $40 billion or whatever it was. I'm not saying they should have paid $40 billion, but there's so many things available in the world. They had a currency, they had an ADR listing. All they had to do was a stock swap and pick it up. That was how it is. State Bank of India should have bought Citibank in 2008. And there were discussions also where the ex-finance minister Chidambaram told the State Bank of India chairman, why don't you go and buy Citibank? But then that's how it is. The mentality, the mindset of trying to play safe, that holds us back.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from Ruchit. He's our FinPlus program student. Ruchit.
Hi, Ruchit.
Hi, sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you for having this session with us. So my first question is like for someone with a limited capital. So what process should he or she should follow to keep the downside risk in check?
Limited capital में तो ज़्यादा risk लेना चाहिए यार, because whatever you lose, you can recover it back. आपका 2 करोड़ रुपया तो उतना risk मत लेना, because जाएगा तो 2 करोड़ बनाने में तेल निकल जाएगा. But अगर 2 लाख रुपया है तो try मारना चाहिए, देखते हैं क्या होता है. This doesn't mean you should do a 7 up, 7 down or play it like a casino or a roulette. It's not like that. But then, you know, with limited capital, you can take more risks. So if I had, say, give me a limited capital ka figure batao mujhe. What is there in your mind with a limited capital when you say that? Any figure that you think?
Like around 5 lakh.
5 lakh is good capital. It's not limited. So when you have 5 lakh, I would put it in 3 stocks. Khatam game. So 3 stocks कैसे 130, एक को मैं डालूंगा 40%, एक को डालूंगा 30, एक को डालूंगा 30, और तीनों ही अगर लुट गया और मैं बर्बाद हो गया, मतलब कि I don't deserve to be in the stock market. So if I lose 140, then 130 can almost recover back, because whatever I lose in the 40% allocation, I am assuming the worst, it's not going to go to zero. आधा होएगा, 20% बचेगा, बाकी 30 वाला निकाल देगा ऊपर मुझे. So with limited capital, as you grow your capital, you should actually think of pouring in more money, but you cannot buy today's stock at yesterday's price. तो अगर आपने जो 500 में लिया है, अगले साल अगर वो 750 हो गया, and you still think that there's a potential for this to go to 2000, then you should put in more money at that time. But limited capital, lesser number of stocks, and that's the way to go about it. And risk तो ज्यादा लेना चाहिए आपके पास. 5 लाख रुपए तो आप कहीं काम स्टार्ट करोगे तो शायद आपकी सैलरी लग जाएगी, तो you can recover that money. But हाँ, if you have 5 crores, 2 crores, then don't be over adventurous unless you really know what you're doing. And let me tell you, the first capital allocation that you do to the market, वो zero ही होता है. तो आप 10,000 से शुरू करो, 5 लाख से शुरू करोगे. पहला जो इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा वो जीरो होगा, बिकॉज जब वो इन्वेस्टमेंट गलत होगा आप उसको बेच के नहीं निकल पाओगे. आपको डर लगेगा मैं लॉस कैसे ले लूं. लॉस ऑलरेडी हो चुका है. It's already down in price, but you will be terrified कि how do I sell it now? I know it's wrong. Then you say इसको उठा के साइड रख दो, इसको देखना ही नहीं है. 2 साल बाद अपने आप भाव आ जाएगा. And that is what normally everyone does, and that is what I also did when I started investing. Yeah.
So actually, just a follow-up question on the same. I was just about to say, and I think you covered it slightly. So in terms of like stop loss, it doesn't matter like if you have a limited capital or you have excess capital. Like I'm sure stop loss.
नहीं, आज का जो मार्केट है इतना वायलेंट है, इतना डिसरप्टिव है, that it's going to take you out in a stop loss and say अच्छा अब दे दूंगा रेश को शेयर और वापस बढ़ जाएगा ऊपर, फिर आप वापस एंटर करोगे, फिर वो गिरेगा, फिर स्टॉप लॉस लगाओगे, फिर एंटर करोगे. सी स्टॉप लॉस जब लगाओ जब आप 15% गेन पे भी काट के निकल जाओ तो. So you bought a stock at 500, stop loss is 450, goes to 600, I will sell it. But that's okay. Downside 50, upside 100, risk reward 2:1. You will make money. But if it goes to 600, 700, you're not selling, right? Then from 700, it falls again. Then there's a problem. Now people will say, put a trailing stop loss, do this, do that. But ultimately, your earnings is your biggest stop loss. If you can get earnings into your stock, then I think that's the best thing to have.
Got it, sir. Ruchit, you can move with the second question.
Yeah. So my second question is like, once we look at a particular stock or an idea, we start analyzing it. And in that process, we often overanalyze and we think that we know everything about the company and we know how much returns it would generate or not generate.
Yeah.
And then, so like, how do we combat that mindset? Because I know it's not the correct mindset to go with.
No, first 2 minutes में आपको पता चल जाएगा. आप कोई भी stock मुझे बताओ, मैं बताऊंगा मेरा दिमाग कैसे चलता है. Supposing I know something about it. So say any stock. First, just throw any name at me. Any name that comes to your mind.
Intellect Design Arena.
Chalo, I don't know something more, too many things about it, but I know it's in the software business. It's not in the top grade category. So if I have 5 stocks, I'm not buying it. If I have 5 lakhs, I'm not buying it. I know that Mr. Arun Jain went to jail in sometime 2001. आप लोग Google कर लेना. तो मुझे लगेगा प्रमोटर पता नहीं क्यों जेल गया, उसको फंसा दिया, क्या किया, बट झमेले का काम है, हम नहीं करेंगे. तो जो भी करना है भाई, हम तो इंटेलेक्ट डिजाइन नहीं लेंगे. आप जितना भी ग्रोथ आ जाए. So this is the 30-second view that I make in my own mind. So, but yes, if I have 40 stocks, then I can put in more money. I would like to go and see 5-year CAGR क्या है, sales का ROE क्या है, company का cash flow क्या है, company का business Europe से आ रहा है कि America से आ रहा है, because the euro is not going up in currency against the rupee. The dollar is going up. So if you have more business out of America, you benefit. The euro could get into a recession because of the Russian thing. So these are the things that come to your mind when you want to buy 40 stocks. When you want to buy 3, 4, 5 companies, then this is how you react.
Got it, sir. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from Dhruv Rathod. He's our alumni presently working with Solidarity. Dhruv?
Hi, Dhruv. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. First of all, your book, The Thoughtful Investor, it's like I have been reading it since 2 weeks and it's really changing everything. So, sir, first of all, I had 2 questions from you. There are many firms, sir, that will have high growth to bring growth, they are doing capex. So the free cash flow in this case would be negative. How should one think in such a scenario where you have higher growth but lower free cash flows at this point?
देखो फ्री कैश फ्लो जब होता है जब आपके पास ग्रोथ नहीं होता है. आप 50-60% ग्रोथ कर रहे हो तो nobody cares about free cash flow. Infra companies में there was no free cash flow in 2003 to 2008. Unitech had no free cash flow 2003 to 2008. Yet those stocks went up 100, 200, 500 times. So when there is scorching growth, nothing matters. ये सब टेक्स्ट बुक की चीजें टेक्स्ट बुक में रह जाती है कि फ्री कैश फ्लो होना चाहिए. जब ग्रोथ खत्म होता है तो where does free cash flow help you? So suppose there is a company, then there is no growth, very little growth, and it's a free cash flow. Then that free cash flow becomes surplus, and the promoters can distribute it as dividends. So the dividend yield keeps on going up year after year, year after year, and the higher yield stops the stock from falling below a certain point. So free cash flow helps you in bad times. And because your company has free cash flow, it means it's debt free. Because if you don't have debt free, you will not have free cash flow normally. Free cash flow means you have a high ROE, return on equity. So high ROE companies ऐसे ही कम गिरते हैं. So free cash flow companies normally fall less when the market turns down. But then normally a free cash flow, if there is growth, nothing matters. Only the growth matters. Management को भी नहीं देखता. आदमी बोलता है ये grow कर रहा है, ले लो इसको. Mindset जो public की होती है at that time is just crazy mindset. So there's this book by Gustavo Le Bon. आप कभी पढ़ना whenever you guys get time. It's called The Crowd. It's a very small book, a thin book. It says that in terms of intelligence, a mathematician and his bootmaker might be separated by miles and miles. A mathematician might be 100 times, 1,000 times more intelligent than his bootmaker, which is a cobbler or a mochi in Hindi language. But in terms of character, they're almost the same. दोनों को इतने ही डर लगते हैं, दोनों की feelings ऐसी है, दोनों एक ही चीज सोचते हैं, दोनों को thought, the character of a person doesn't differ, whether you're a billionaire or you're a millionaire or you got 1,000 rupees in your pocket. The character remains the same. And here the character means, in this context, it means ki, are you getting afraid of the market or not? How do you deal with the situation? How do you deal with the market? So things like that.
Correct. Thank you so much, sir. And my second question was around your philosophy. Actually, I was going through the website and was just going through your investment philosophy, and I read that you need scalable business both in terms of value and volume growth. But sometimes we see periods where there is only volume growth, and sometimes periods where there is only value growth. What can we do in such situations? Like in FMCG currently, the volume growth struggles, but the companies are going more on the value growth side. So what are your views on those?
So when there is a complete penetration, you will not have volume growth. For example, a toothpaste कितना extra बेच देंगे लोग इंडिया में? In telecom, there is no volume growth. The number of SIM cards in India exceeds the population of the country. So how many people will buy more SIM cards or keep more phones? So what matters is volume growth, because volume growth defines scalability. Value you can take only up to a point. ना मतलब आपका फीस 1,000 से मैं 2,000 कर दूं, 2,500 कर दूं, 5,000 कर दूं, then what? So if you really want to scale up your business, you need volume. You need new customers, new clients. So there's this thing, whenever you want to expand a business or when you're looking at a company, you have to look at it from 3 points. First is new products, new geographies, or new distribution. So if it's a new product, then obviously volume ka to problem hi nahi hai. You've suddenly got a new product. It's a new geography. It means volume with new people, or new distribution, which is in the same geography, you're creating a new distribution. So these are the kind of things that you have to look for while you're looking at a company. But if you don't have volume growth, then it's very difficult to take value growth. Because see, Apple kya karta hai? Every year, iPhone 12, iPhone 13, iPhone 14, iPhone 15, iPhone 19, iPhone 27. Every year they will make a new phone with a better camera, with more storage, faster charging. So on a broad scale, मुझे नहीं लगता 10% ज़्यादा का फर्क है. But it's become such a cult that it creates volume growth. How? I throw away my old phone or give it to somebody else at home and I buy a new one. So it motivates you to become their customer in terms of volume. Though, I mean, how many of you heard about this company called Hindustan Motors? They used to make these ambassador cars about 30 years back, 40 years back. And they used to have the same car, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. अब गाड़ी में ही फर्क नहीं होता था. Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4 was the new logo that he used to put behind the car. Same car, वो वैसी चलती थी, नहीं चलने पे धक्का मार दो, उसको क्लच छोड़ते ही स्टार्ट हो जाती थी. But then those are the kind of things you don't want to do. Why would I upgrade from a Mark 1 to a Mark 2 if it's everything same? So you have to market your product like it's different. Then you create volume where there is no volume to be created. But you can't sell SIM cards tomorrow saying this is the new improved SIM card from Vodafone. So you can't do that. So sometimes there's a problem.
Correct. Thank you so much, sir, for answering my question.
So the next question is from Rishabh. He's our FinPlus program student. Rishabh.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Rishabh.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hi.
My question is, I've read your summary of the book and also I've looked over your interviews where you specified about selling of a stock is on a priority basis, such as when you find a new investment to invest in. But also in major of your interviews, you have described about how you have generated exceptional return but also you have sold the stock just after the stock has fallen down. I have kept falling down. So I just wanted to know that is that the apt reason to sell the stock?
No, I will give you example. So there was this call called Canfin Home Finance. We made 6-7 times money there, and then it was supposed to be sold. Sold means the company was supposed to be taken over or sold or whatever. HDFC was supposed to be buying it, and it was I think 29th March, and 31st March was the deadline. So we thought that यार government company 31st March को बेचेंगे तो कल CAG की inquiry बैठ जाएगी, audit बैठ जाएगी, it will not be sold. So we exited Canfin Home Finance at that time. So similarly, there has to be a reason for you to sell a stock, and if the price is, so we had Reliance Industries during the COVID times. We bought into it, and the stock kept going up and up and up, and then we held on to Reliance because we thought अब इसमें Jio का IPO आएगा, retail का IPO आएगा, and the stock price will go up. But after a certain level, the stock price did not go up, and then we thought, let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what happens. The news came that maybe Mr. Ambani is not keeping well, and the stock fell 8-9% that day. And suddenly we sold off because there was no new trigger, and we were waiting for a trigger. And sometimes the price tells you that the trigger is not happening or not coming. So you don't sell on the basis of price, but if the price is also not acting right, and the information and the belief with which you have held a stock is not coming out correct, then obviously you combine these two things and you sell. But you cannot depend on just one, because sometimes your information could be wrong and the price could be going up. But normally when the price starts to fall, you want to sell. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Also, I have another question, which is about averaging down the stock, which is you are totally, I can't say
against.
But you are against. But
against.
Yes, sir. So if a good fundamental stock is coming down, which you have invested in, it comes down to your price and it goes below. So why isn't it a good option to increase the quantity?
No, depend karta. Agar secular growth story and the prices come down, then you buy more of it. For example, you bought say a Kotak Bank or an ICICI Bank. Kotak Bank, is going to exist for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So then there's no problem in averaging a Kotak Bank. But if you bought, say, for example, a South Indian bank and the stock price is coming down, then you don't know what's happening. Kal kaun sa NPA nikal dega, kya hoga? So the character of the stock will tell you whether it deserves to be averaged or not. But if the management and the business model is top quality, then obviously you don't want to average. Yeah. Then you average, obviously. Sorry. So if the management and the business is top quality, then you average. But if it's not of the top quality, it's something inferior, then you don't average. In a cyclical, you never average. If Tata Steel is coming down, if SAIL is coming down, if Hindalco is coming down, you don't average because you don't know ye 3-year ka down cycle hai ki 2-year ka down cycle. So that's it.
Also, sir, I have another question. Suppose, sir, you are a strong believer in high ROE and in low debt of a company.
Yeah.
But, sir, the problem is if a company is having low debt, then the company would use the money from the equity. So the return would obviously go down because it's using the more of equity. So why?
No, I've got it. So if the ROE is high, you can use debt because growth is normally ROE into 1 minus payout ratio, right? So payout ratio से आप minus करोगे 1 minus into ROE तो आपको मिल जाएगा. But अगर मेरा ROE 12% और मैं 10% का डेट लिया हूँ, so the wafer margin है दोनों के बीच में. If ROE is 40%, जितना डेट लेना है लो, जितना expand करना है कर लो. So if the ROE is high, you take debt. If the ROE is low, then you don't take debt. I mean, if the ROE is low, then you don't buy the company also. That's another thing. But the ROE should decide the debt. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for patiently asking all of our students and alumni questions. Now it is our turn. So hopefully, please bear with us. So we have 5 questions which we shortlisted, maybe perhaps to learn from you. The first one is like, we have seen that you are a keen watcher of markets. You have observed market cycles as well as sector cycles. Like, how do you keep a track where the market, at what point of cycle the market might be, or in case if there are any shifts happening in the markets within, let's say, large caps or small caps, how is it that you track those?
So one thing is, आप ऐसा समझो, आप flight में travel किए होगे. So let me talk about markets right now. So the first announcement, if you have a boarding pass in hand, is they say people in first class and business class may first board the flight. तो बड़े जो अच्छे कपड़े पहन के रहते हैं लोग वो पहले चढ़ जाते हैं और इकोनॉमी वाले इधर उधर देखते हो लंबी लंबी लाइनें बना के पीछे खड़े रहते हैं. तो देन जैसे इकोनॉमी क्लास, जोन 1, जोन 2, जोन 3, जोन 4 सब आ जाओ, फिर हम लोग सब घुसते हैं अंदर. Now what is the logic? When the Nifty went from 15,200 to 17,200, people say अरे मेरा तो स्मॉल कैप बढ़ा ही नहीं, मेरा मिड कैप बढ़ा ही नहीं. हम लोग सब इकोनॉमी वाले हो, ये आपका स्मॉल कैप मिड कैप वाले. पहले लार्ज कैप जो रियल निफ्टी स्टॉक्स है वो बिजनेस एंड फर्स्ट क्लास है. So they will move up first. The economy class comes second, and the reason is in business class there is no value. You cannot, if you're traveling from India to America in business class, you pay 4 lakh rupees, right? And economy will pay 120,000 rupees. So obviously value to economy में है, लेकिन आपको boarding जल्दी नहीं मिलेगी, आपकी flight take off शायद same time पे करे. So the idea is first the large caps move. The large caps will move. Now you will say large cap तो गिर गया, अब क्या होगा? जब तक small cap participation नहीं आएगा, till the time small caps don't participate, a rally doesn't stop, because you have to catch hold of the retailer again, because the retailer is still arranging his money and thinking अब मैं वापस आता हूँ इस बाजार में. जब तक, क्योंकि market if it falls, the retailer will come in and buy the fall, and that is what happens. So you have to understand, and the basic premise is when bad news cannot take the stock down further, and when good news cannot take the stock up again or the market up again, then you know that the bear market is coming to an end when bad news cannot take it down further, and where and a bull market is coming to an end when good news cannot take the stock up again beyond a point. So these are the two things you look for, and you have to follow them on an everyday basis and then see what is happening. कोई खराब सी न्यूज आई, पेलोसी वहां पे गई है, चाइना ने रॉकेट छोड़ दिया, निफ्टी 200 पॉइंट गिर गया, then Nifty recovered 200. For you will say thank God recover कर गया, but there's a hidden meaning. It means there is some strength in the market that the Nifty has recovered back. So you have to look at it like that.
Got it, sir. And sir, from the discussions from today's questions, you mentioned that, some management quality, I guess maybe sometimes it lies slightly bad, but good growth businesses are great in terms of investment choices. Like, where do you draw that line in terms of, this is it, like, no matter what growth this business offers, I'm not going to invest in this business?
If there is no comparable, for example, मैं जब Pantaloon लिया, I didn't have too much knowledge, and that's why I bought Pantaloon. I had this fascination and imagination that this is the Walmart. India से एक Walmart तो बनी गई. So there's this company called Vakrangi. I don't know you guys have heard about it or not. और डिविडेंड भी देती थी, टैक्स भी देता था, सब कुछ करता था, फिर भी भाव क्यों गिर गया? मुझे बताओ कि वक्रांगी का इंटरनेशनल इक्विवेलेंट है क्या? If there is no international equivalent, then Vakrangi is not a good stock to buy. But if there is an international equivalent, then you can buy a stock like Vakrangi. So anything that is made money in India should have an international equivalent. For example, आप अगर Axis Bank ले रहे हो, HDFC Bank ले रहे हो, then in western coast of America, there is this company called Wells Fargo. तो आप बोलेंगे वेल्स फार्गो तो है यार, वो अच्छी कंपनी है, वहां तो पैसे बने हैं लोगों के. अब आप अगर फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू thought that okay, let me go and buy let's say cement company in India. Of course Ultratech has made money, but cement companies globally haven't made money. So you have to look for a global comparable which has made people rich, then you go and buy these companies. For example, Starbucks has made a lot of money for its investors. I think it had a 30% plus top line growth for the first so many years. And then you draw the comparable. Then you say, okay, Starbucks has made money, so what can I buy in India? Then you say, चलो Starbucks तो नहीं है इंडिया में, आप Tata Consumer लेंगे. But if you ask me, I'll say no, because Tata Consumer में Starbucks is only a small part of that. Most of it is tea business and all of that. So then you say, okay, DMart. Walmart has made money there, I want to buy DMart. So first, the question that you should ask is, Z listing was 1991 mein. Then you would say Warner Brothers in America has done well. So the first question to ask is there a globally competitive company or a global company in the same sector that has made money for its shareholders? If there is a global company, then you buy the one in India, or else no.
Even if it has significant governance issues?
Give me a name.
So let's say if you come across any particular company where management is trying to, for example, let's say Mirza International, like it had a UK arm where they used to sell off, after purchasing.
I don't know about Mirza, but then वो leader नहीं है, तो वो लेने का फायदा नहीं.
Got it.
So it's not the leader, वो लफड़ा उधर ही होएगा. हाँ, then if you say कि भाई अडानी लेना चाहिए कि नहीं लेना चाहिए, मुझे समझ नहीं आता, मैं नहीं लेता अडानी. But that's how it is. You have to understand on companies which you understand, which you are sure of. And you cannot buy companies whose future is dependent on so many things. For example, Mirza International is not a leader in this sense. I don't know what happened to the stock price also, but I looked at it and I didn't like it at all. Not because of anything, but because it was not the leader. See, if you're the best, you will become the leader. As simple as that.
Got it, sir. Got it, sir. I think I have a clarity. So the third question which we had was like, do you use any derivative markets or indicators from cash markets to understand how the market is behaving?
No, long-term shareholders के लिए derivative का कोई काम ही नहीं होता है. Long-term shareholders should just focus on the earnings of a company and mostly the earnings of a company. Till the time the company doesn't disappoint you in earnings, it will not disappoint you with the stock price. So all it needs is somebody to hold the stock.
Any like hedging activities which you conduct to help or hedge your existing portfolios?
So hedging, no, we don't hedge our portfolios at all. Hedging always comes with a cost, right? So if you are hedging something, then you're paying the cost. If you're paying 3-4% cost of hedging a portfolio, then obviously you're paying so much money to actually get the portfolio into normal things. So वो फायदा नहीं होता है उसका, आपको cream तो वहीं निकल जाएगा.
Net of
that is the problem. Yeah.
But then you said you also invest in international stocks. So do you go about hedging those investments or you keep it?
No. Just naked.
Fair enough. So the next question which we had, like, now that we are still, learning through the course of our, trainings, as well as any particular unheard, impactful reading recommendations which you would like to share with us in terms of building our business understandings or improving our thinking processes?
So I don't know. There is these books which you should read. Have you heard about Money Masters of Our Time by John Train?
Okay.
Have you heard of this? Then
no, sir, I haven't.
So you should buy the book. उसमें खास बात ये है कि in one book you read about 20-30 different people in one chapter each. So then you can figure out कि Warren Buffett क्या करता था, Peter Lynch क्या किया, उसने क्या किया, इसने क्या किया. This summary बनाया है, like about 10, 20, 15 pages of each of these guys. Then there's this book. So I'm giving you 5 books that you should read. It's called Reminiscences of a Stock Operator by it's on Jesse Livermore, and Jesse Livermore's life is very interesting. So he used to do a big satta speculation, and then he used to go in his yacht in an island. And in those days, you had the telegram. So they used to telegram him and say, we've sold this, we've bought this. And there were these bucket shops where the house used to take the other side. So it was like, if you're going to a casino, the casino guy says, isko mat ghusne do, ye humse paisa kama ke jata hai roz. So he was boycotted from entering any of the bucket shops because he was so good at trading. So this is the second book. The third one is, don't read all the Warren Buffett letters. It's just too much of a headache for you. There's this book called Dane Cunningham ki kitab hai, Essays of Warren Buffett, Lessons for Corporate America, or something like that. So this is the third one. One Up on Wall Street is obviously there, which you should read and must read. So I think if you can read these 4 or 5 books, I think you're done. Up then the Common Stocks, Uncommon Profits, Philip Fisher, ye wo sab aap padhte jaoge. But ye 4 books, you should read them over and over and over again. And the worst thing to read is the newspaper. उसमें जो आज relevant है, कल ही relevant नहीं है, तो उसका क्या फायदा है पढ़ने का? हम तो 10, 12, 15 साल हो गए पेपर पढ़ना छोड़ दिए हैं. Because I'll give you yesterday's newspaper. आप बोले क्या सर ये क्या दियो पढ़ने, क्या पढ़ूं इसमें मैं? तो मतलब आप खुद ही एक दिन के बाद उसका यूज नहीं समझ रहे हो, आप क्यों इतना समय लगा रहे हो पढ़ने में? जो इन्फॉर्मेशन है ट्विटर पे, फेसबुक पे, बिजनेस चैनल्स पे, we get it, and whatever is relevant to us, you can Google more about them. What is not relevant? Why do you want to hear who died where, and why do you want to hear who ran away with whose purse? तो वो वाली कहानी है. न्यूज़पेपर तो मुझे लगता है वेस्ट ऑफ टाइम है, सुबह आधा घंटा. उसमें आदमी किताब पढ़ेगा तो ज्यादा सीखेगा.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, any mistakes which you made in early stages of your career which you would want this generation to avoid?
I didn't read for the first 10 years. यार अगर मैं first day, first show मैं 200-300 किताब पढ़ाऊंगा stock market की, but I should have read all of them starting my career. So I didn't read them. और उसमें था भी नहीं. Early 90s, 91, 92 में you couldn't buy a Warren Buffett book. You could never buy it. But I used to read Economic Times, Financial Express, Business Standard, Hindu Business Line. हमारे कलकत्ता में मिलता नहीं था, तो वो दिन में 2 बजे आता था चेन्नई के फ्लाइट से, वो भी पढ़ता था. और ये उसका नतीजा ये हुआ कि 8-10 साल बीत गए, पैसे नहीं बने, बिकॉज समझ ही नहीं आया क्या करना है। और न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ पढ़ के स्टॉक लेते थे, वो मंडे को इन्वेस्टर्स गाइड मिलता था, वो देखते थे कौन सा वाला लेना है। तो 7:30 बजे you were always eager to read the stocks that have been recommended. So at 9:50, the market used to open at 9:50. You have to tell a broker, मैं मेरा स्टॉक शेयर खरीद लो। न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ के अगर आपको कोई स्टॉक मिलता है तो उसको मत खरीदना कभी। I think that's what you can do. The worst thing to do is newspaper, if you ask me. And today's equivalent of the newspaper is the Twitter and the Facebook. So that is what it is. Yeah.
Okay, sir. And sir, one last question from our side. One crucial life-changing advice, obviously you gave one to be the reading. Any other advice apart from that, which you got from your own life?
Two things. Yeah, the first thing, जो पहला पैसा आप लगाओगे बाजार में वो डूबेगा, नहीं डूबेगा तो आप ज्यादा डूबोगे। You have to lose the first money out. And the only situation you will not lose your first money is out when you ask somebody कि मैं क्या ले लूं, वो बोलेगा ब्रिटानिया ले ले, आप ब्रिटानिया ले लोगे लेकिन आप सीखोगे कुछ नहीं। जब तक वो पैसा डूबेगा नहीं, you will never learn. You have to let the first investment blow up. First thing. Second thing, if the money you bring to the market is the one that you can afford to lose, you will lose it. You have to think that I cannot lose this money. ये पैसा मेरा खो ही नहीं सकता है. So for the first 8-9 years, we had a family business running. I used to get the money. I used to put it here. My dad used to give me salary from his business. मैं बोलता था मैं salary लूंगा तो ही मैं जाऊंगा ऑफिस, नहीं तो मैं नहीं जाऊंगा. And the money just I kept losing and losing and losing, but it never affected me because share market losses wouldn't have meant that the electricity company would have come and disconnected my electric current for the next day. But in 2000, 2001, my father passed away and my business went to zero. Then that time I had the money which I just could not afford to lose. And that is where I really understood what investing is all about. So if the money you bring to the market is the one you can afford to lose, you will lose it. And the third and the most important thing, have a big vision. For example, how I think. आपने एक स्टॉक लिया, let's say for example आपने एक कोई भी स्टॉक लिया, let's say XYZ ले लिया, आपने स्नोफ्लेक ले लिया। स्नोफ्लेक लेने का नहीं, हमने लिया नहीं, हम देख रहे हैं, अमेरिका की बात है। So you think it's going to go up 10 times. आपने 10 लाख रुपए डाले उसमें। I'm taking a bigger figure so it can make a meaningful impact. Never think you have 10 lakhs in Snowflake. Always think you have 1 crore in Snowflake because that is your ultimate goal, to make 1 crore out of Snowflake. ये डबल होएगा तो बेचना नहीं है, ये ट्रिपल होएगा तो बेचना नहीं है। You bought a house in Ahmedabad, right? And the price goes up by 20%. You don't sell the veranda and get the kitchen free. With a stock, we always do this. Whenever the stock price goes up, you get new aspirations, new thoughts. नहीं गाड़ी खरीद लें, ज्वेलरी खरीद लें, ये कर लें, वो कर लें, कुछ नहीं करने का। शेयर का पैसा शेयर में ही रहने दो. And try and invest as much as you can in the initial years. So I think these 2-3 things, and you have to think, obviously you have to think big. You have to think, I'm going to make 5 crores, 10 crores out of this market. Then only you will make it. ये शेयर बाजार इतनी बड़ी चीज है. It's like saying कि आपके बगल में कोई बड़ा सा पानी का टैंकर और आप बोल रहे हो कि आपके घर में पानी नहीं है, लेकिन आप बोल रहे हो मैं बस एक ही गिलास पी के वापस घर चला जाऊंगा. अगर टैंकर है तो पूरे घर के सारे बर्तन लाइए, सारे पानी उठाइए और घर में रख लीजिए. कम से कम 1-2 महीने की पानी पूरा स्टोर करिए. So this is what a stock market is all about. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful session. It truly means a lot to us. You took out time for our students. It was very enlightening, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of follow-up questions as well from our viewers, which with this video, which will obviously upload on our YouTube channel, Financial Shah Classes. So we'll definitely get in touch with you for more such insights. So please spare some time.
Thank you so much. Bilkul. So what I will do is, in case I'm traveling to that area of Surat, I will come and maybe hopefully we'll do it one-on-one, face-to-face.
Thank you so much, sir. That would really mean a lot to us. We soon plan to launch a podcast as well. So it definitely would mean a lot to us, sir.
Sure.
Thank you so much for the time, sir. We hope you give us similar opportunities in near future to host you once again and learn from your experiences. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.